What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. I actually had someone write in the comment section that they were unsubscribing because my takes were pissing them off. They liked me, but my takes were pissing them off. So you really didn't like me. And I know what it is. It was because of my last take on the playoffs where I had LeBron number 5. You know what I'm saying? That's all they cared about. All they cared about was where I put the guy they liked. Everything else was immaterial. At the end of the day, I mean, can't you just debate why you think I'm wrong in the comment section? I mean, if you want a cult of LeBron, there's a lot of channels you can go to on YouTube. You know, and just because I have LeBron number 5 as far as playoffs, that doesn't mean that I don't have him higher a little bit overall. Um, I'm just talking playoffs. And at the end of the day, the playoffs do mean a lot, though. They do mean a lot. They do. And I'm going to tell you something. After doing this list, I may have to readjust some things in my all-time list because maybe I've been shortchanging some guys and maybe I've been overrating a few guys. Um, but at the end of the day, it's just the playoffs. Mean a lot, but some people it means more than others. Some people they put other things into the equation. I think this pick right here is the one that nobody really saw coming. I saw the guesses. I see a lot of people's top 10 playoff performers, and I think they're shortchanging this guy a lot. They're shortchanging him. Just do a brief recap. At number 10, I had Larry Bird. Number 9, Kobe Bryant. Number 8, Hakeem Olajuwon. Number 7, Tim Duncan. Number 6, I had Irvin Magic Johnson. Number 5, LeBron James. Number 4, I have Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Olajuwon won 2 NBA championships. Um, he appeared in 3 NBA finals altogether: 1986, 1994, and 1995. He won 2 finals MVPs, and he's one of the most dominant playoff performers from an individual standpoint in the history of the NBA. And over time, I think that he's become uh, I think he's become very underrated. I'll put it to you like that. He's become very underrated to the point where if you ask a lot of younger people, who would you rate higher, Barkley, Shaq, or Olajuwon? I think most of them would put Barkley and Shaq over him. When those of us who actually watched those guys play, we know damn well Olajuwon was the more dominant player and the better player over those two, as great as both of those two were. Shaq was more dominant because of his physicality, but Olajuwon was something special. Olajuwon to me is the most skilled big man I've ever seen in my life. The most skilled. I seen someone say something about Joel Embiid is like Olajuwon, but with a crossover. Did you not see Olajuwon use a crossover when he was playing? You didn't see him do that? This is the shit they make up. Olajuwon had a crossover. What the fuck are they talking about? Olajuwon had guard skills that he would display. Olajuwon had perimeter skills and some of the greatest, if not the greatest, post play in the history of the NBA. Period. People be making shit up, man. These dudes, man. But anyway, you might say, well, 2 championships is great, 3 finals appearances, but but is it really warrant a number 4? And I'm gonna tell you another knock on Olajuwon. In the 18 years that he played, 18 seasons, his team missed the playoffs or got knocked out in the first round half of the time. 9 of the 18 seasons he played, his team either did not qualify or they were knocked out in the first round. And that does knock him down quite a bit from being higher on this list. But the reason why I have so much respect for him is because when you look at his teams for the majority of his prime, I'm not talking about when Barkley came, when Olajuwon was starting to fall apart. For the most of his prime, he did not have a lot of help, and he legitimately did not have a lot of help. And that compounded with the fact that Don Chaney had this philosophy where they were relying more on their guards, primarily Vernon Maxwell and Kenny Smith, than Olajuwon. Now, what sense does that make? To the point where Olajuwon was demanding a trade by the fall of 1992. He needed more help. Um, Help was on the way. He never had a super team, but he had pieces, pieces that were needed for a championship team. The Rockets became a better team. They were always a great team defensively. Sometimes offensively was the problem. But in came rookie Sam Cassell. In came Robert Ory, Mario Ellie. They got Otis Thorpe in 92, 93. And the Rockets were also probably the first championship team that I can think of to really utilize the 3-point shot. We think about it, they were the first championship team to really stretch the floor and utilize the three. And that made them very dangerous. Um, you double Olajuwon, who had the improved passing ability by that time, made you pay, kick it out to Mario Ellie, kick it out to Matt Bullard, kick it out to Kenny Smith, and what I'm saying, that made them a very dangerous team. You had Vernon Maxwell, who's a great defender, Olajuwon, the defensive anchor, Mario Ellie, a bulldog. They had a really good team, man. But to put the focus more on Olajuwon, you look at Olajuwon's regular season numbers, right? 21.8 points, um, 11.1 rebounds, 2.5 blocks per game. Great all around career numbers, especially considering he played 18 years, which included the downside of his career. When you look at his playoff numbers, and you see this huge phenomenal jump in his numbers, one of the biggest jumps that you'll see in the history of the league. It goes from 21.8 points per game to 25.9 points per game. Rebounds 11.1 to 11.2. Blocks 2.5 to 3.2 blocks per game. 3.3 assists. 1.7 steals per game. He shot 53% from the floor for his career in the playoffs. Played in 145 playoff games in his career. And Olajuwon was a guy that was very durable in the playoffs. He averaged almost 40 minutes a game for 39.6 minutes per contest. 8 consecutive playoff runs, he averaged over 40 minutes per game. Olajuwon was a great all-around basketball player, both offense and defense. He led the playoffs in scoring twice. 1988, he averaged an absurd 37.5 points per game. In 1994, the year that they won their first title, he averaged 28.9 points per game during their playoff run. And in his unbelievable playoff run in 1995, he averaged 33 points per game, 33 points per contest. Unbelievable playoff run he had in 1995 when he asserted himself with Michael Jordan back in the league, by the way, as the best basketball player on the planet. With Michael Jordan back, it didn't matter. Olajuwon was the best basketball player on the planet from 1994 to 1996. And then Michael Jordan reestablished himself as the best player shortly thereafter. But from that time period, Olajuwon was the man in the NBA. Olajuwon led the playoffs in rebounding twice. 1988, he averaged 16.8 rebounds per game. 1989, he averaged 13 rebounds per game. He led the playoffs in block shots thrice. 1989, he averaged 4.3 blocks per contest. In 1990, he averaged an absurd 5.8 blocks per game. In 1993, he averaged a ridiculous 4.9 blocks per contest. For a center, Olajuwon got an incredible amount of steals, oftentimes in the passing lanes, but also with his quick hands with strips as well. 5 different seasons, playoffs, I should say. Olajuwon averaged at least 2 steals per game, and this is coming from a center. I want to say something about the 1986 finals, by the way, too. Going against Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale in the 86 finals, Olajuwon was still able to average 24.7 points, 11.8 rebounds, 3.2 blocks, 2.3 uh, assists per game. He dominated Robert Parrish statistically. I think Robert Parrish averaged like something like 14 points and 9 rebounds. I mean, he just dominated uh, Robert Parrish and dominated Kevin McHale. If the Rockets had got more typical um, numbers, if they were able to get more uh, output, production from Robert Reed and Ralph Sampson, they may have been able to upset Boston in that finals. Even with Ralph Sampson only averaging 14.8 points, 9.5 rebounds, and Robert Reed only shooting 42%, which was very low back in the 80s. Even with that, they were able to go 6 games with Boston. If they had gotten more production out of them, they could have perhaps taken it to a game 7, and maybe, who knows, maybe they would have upset it. Maybe they would have upset it Boston in that particular year. Who knows, man? Um, Another thing you could say about Hakeem Olajuwon is that he rose to the occasion in the playoffs. This is a guy that, in addition to the players I just named, Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale, he's outplayed players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the playoffs. He's outplayed, as we all know, Patrick Ewing. He dominated David Robinson in the '95 conference finals. He outplayed Shaq in the '95 finals. Um, this is a team, like I said before, that did not have, you know, multiple superstars. And they leaned heavy on Olajuwon, and Olajuwon did not let them down, especially in '95. Now, a lot of people like to say, man, if it wasn't for Michael Jordan being retired, the Rockets would not have won. And as a Bulls fan, I argue that as well. But being an analyst, I have to be fair. I think that the Rockets would have been the toughest foe for the Bulls in their title run. They would have been the toughest. Um, Ewing, as great as he was, did not have the plethora of moves that Olajuwon had. As great as a shot blocker he was not as strategic and, and as dominant a shot blocker as Olajuwon. Um, Ewing was also he had a higher basketball IQ, and Olajuwon handled pressure, in my opinion, better than Patrick Ewing. You know, Olajuwon generally was going to make the best basketball play out there, and sometimes Ewing did not survey the floor as well as a guy like Hakeem Olajuwon. And sometimes Ewing played right into the Chicago Bulls defense hands. Olajuwon would not have probably done that. And take that into account with the fact that he had all those great shooters around him. He had all those dogs around him. The Rockets were a big team in a lot of ways. I think they would have been a tremendous to the Bulls, you know. Um, but that's all I have to say about this, man. I think Hakeem Olajuwon is one of the most underrated playoff performers in the history of the game. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but tell me what you guys think.